Hi, this is Coach Dan Williams with Character Advantage. Have you ever been in a situation where you were frustrated with your coach? Now, if you haven't already done so, I want you to subscribe right now to this channel and hit the like button, put a comment in there. Let's get the conversation going. And if you haven't shared this channel with someone that you know, I want you to do that today. Now, when you are in that situation, frustrated with a coach, what do? I realized that the most powerful role that I could play for my player as a parent was that of a guide. Because the reality was I was trying to coach my player as a parent. You are trying to do that through the questions you ask. Have you ever asked your player, okay, what did the coach tell you today? Or what are you working on right now? What is the coach telling you that you need to do to get better? It's not that those questions are bad, but maybe a more powerful question would be, what are you struggling with right now? What is the challenge that you're facing right now? How are you feeling about where you are right now? Because all of those things are more centered on where the heart is of that player. I needed to stop thinking about tactics and technique and skill. I needed to begin to think more on the lines of what was the makeup of my player? How are they dealing with the situations that they were in? And that's when I began to realize that, attitudes are what drive us. It's almost like the code, it's like the computer code that runs the software. And so when I began to focus on those things, the attitudes, and identify what they were, I began to then have a clear course that I could begin to focus on as a guide. Now, on that course, the reality is that we are going to go through difficult times. There are going to be times on this journey that we're on with our player where things are going to be going great. But the reality is, as a guide, we know that right around the corner is going to come a difficult obstacle, or maybe a decline in performance, or a challenge that's going to come through a difficult experience. And so when we know that as a guide, we're preparing beforehand to walk through that experience with our player. And I realize that the most powerful way that we as humans have passed on information and wisdom has been through narrative. Narrative was a tool that we used as humans way before artificial intelligence. Now we can go to Google and we can type it in. We can go to our AI of choice and type it in, and we can get a response that's based on all this information that's sitting somewhere on a hard drive. But the reality is we've been doing this as humans since the beginning of time. Through narrative, we pass on information, and that's how we absorb information, and that's how we take on new information. And so my role as a guide began to change from that of an assistant coach to now the storyteller, the person who is going to help pass on information and wisdom. And through that process, I also began to learn how stories actually work. Because the reality is I may have a picture in my mind of what that story communicates, but I began to realize that as I was telling the story and then asking for feedback and reflection on that story, my player would always reflect on or give me something that I didn't see in the story. And my first reaction was, no, that's not what the story is communicating. But I would stop myself over time and realize, no, there's something that I'm learning through this experience, and it's what we do. You do, and I do, and everyone around us does. We write our own stories. We will hear a story, we'll go through an experience, and then we kind of make up our own story as we're in that experience. And so it was an insight that I began to see and realize that I was having access to into the heart of my player and into their mindset. And so I really began to listen more intently on what I was hearing. And that would inform me in the direction of travel that I would take and how I may need to adjust the course that we were on, and maybe how I needed to find another story to kind of, help guide my player on this journey that we were both on. I know you know someone who's also on that journey like you. And I would love for them to benefit from what we can learn together about how character can be our advantage.